It's the cry of generation. It's a stirring in our soul. It's dreams still in focus. It's hope still whole. For children that are and those who will be, our destiny is justice for once, for all, forever. Let it be. No more delays, denials can ignore our voices, nor suppress our choices. We come for all that God has gave, unashamed descendants of the indigenous immigrants and the once enslaved. For children that are and all those who will be, our destiny is justice for once, for all, forever. Let it be. Liberation when we read, love when we lead, moving at the speed of student needs, pushing against the abundance of oppressive greed. For children that are and all those who will be, our destiny is justice for once, for all, forever. Let it be. So we're gonna have a chat just about justice. You're sitting at this chair because you are what we call a justice warrior, somebody who's been doing this work and continues to do this work. Not just, I think, in some of your many roles that you've done in life, but I think just your life. I think you have that DNA passed down to you from some great parents that I had a chance to know. And we're just talking about that work and what does it mean to be still fighting for justice? What does it mean to, can we realize it? And all that good stuff. But I think first is like, who are you? Like, that's a big,
I'm just in therapy.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure it out.
Like, who, and how did you get here? Like, just, and you know, I know that's a lot, but
Yeah.
you know, how did you get to be Mary Sewell in the position that you're in right now in life?
Wow. Well, I mean, other people, you know, I'm just formed by the people that I came from, my family, and then the people I've met along the way, like you. And I think one of the things I'm proudest of is I think I'm shaped by others, you know, and I'm always learning, and I see something I admire in someone else, and I'm immediately like, I could be that, I could be better, I could do that. And so
She's got a mean three-pointer because she watched Steph Curry.
Yeah, no, I taught Steph Curry.
Yeah.
I'm older than he is,
Yeah.
so yeah. So I think that's part of it, but definitely my family. I was thinking about this on the way over here. We had these narratives and stories that started before my parents, like from their parents and their grandparents, and those, now as I look back, I think those actually really gave me a sort of sense of duty and obligation, and also strength sometimes. Like, you know, my mom was a single mother. Her mom raised 7 kids on her own. Like, I think there was something about, like, when things are hard, you can acknowledge it, but you just have to keep moving. And I think in the fight for justice and change, it is really hard. And I've told this to my daughters, that I think they believe sometimes you're going to feel good, you know, when you're doing the right thing and the best thing. And it feels sometimes so hard, and you just have to know inside that it's the right thing, because no one's going to clap for you. No one's going to say thank you. But you do it because you know it's best for kids in our situation. So
You and I have known each other 16 years now. I was like, I can't believe that our kids are like babies, like when we first met. Now they're, you know, they're young adults and changing the world and all this stuff. I want to start there because as I think sometimes, like in your public roles, people forget that you're a mother, right? And I think a lot of even our leaders of the civil rights movement, leaders of the women's suffrage movement, folks forgot that these leaders also had a very personal side to them, right? And so when you think about your girls, as a mom, how has that stirred your push for justice?
Wow, that's a powerful question. I mean, obviously, I think we want to think beyond our kids a lot of times in our work, because, you know, especially me as like a middle-class white woman who's had a lot of privilege, like if I just focus on thinking about what's best for them, then I can forget sort of how the system created around them actually it has so much injustice. So I mean, I think what it does though is it grounds me in love, you know, and it grounds me when I think about other children that are growing and they're imperfect and they're figuring it out. Like everyone deserves chances to sort of make mistakes and stumble, and they either need their parents' love but they need like the community's love too, to kind of give them that space. And I'm so proud of my girls, and it's been not a straight line of, you know, I mean, I talk to these people who's like, you know, they're like, my kids have done X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, my kids are amazing humans, and they're getting there, and I want to give that grace to all kids. I think that's probably what they've taught me.
And I think it's so amazing because, you know, you have been consistently that person since we've met. For most folks who don't know, we met both running for school board.
Yeah.
Mary had the honor of winning. I did not win. I had like 18 people
should have won. Yeah, you did. It was like,
they were trying to keep me out for sure.
I know, it was not good. Yeah.
But Mary, you did this crazy thing. I remember us first meeting at the old City Park.
That's
golf
exactly
course.
where
That was
I can envision you so clearly, and us meeting for the first time. And I was wearing a jean jacket.
You were,
and
she was out. I was like, Mary Sue, like the earth stood still when Mary walked through.
Yeah.
But you got on the Denver School Board, and what shocked you first when it came to the injustices that you saw, the systemic injustices that you spoke about a little bit? What shocked you first?
How those systems are just people, and how you have this idea of change is going to be like, you're going to point out the injustice and you're going to say this needs to be fixed, and then we're going to fix it because, like, of course, that's the right idea and the best idea. And people are just fragile, frail, imperfect. I'm speaking of myself too. And to change a system and to fix injustice, you have to change people. People have to change, and you have to be a voice for that. And I think I was just shocked. I think I thought it would just be because people want to do the right thing, and sometimes they don't know what that is. And so it's that same thing. If you can let them grow and be imperfect, and you can grow and be imperfect, and then that's actually the foundation and the building blocks of actually creating real systemic change.
Powerful. Representative Bacon, we sat and talked with her, and she said that these systemic injustices are man-made. It's a quote that she said that just has stuck with me since the last few days. They're man-made, not God-made, she said. And so since they're man-made, they could be undone.
Right.
And I think it speaks to what you're saying, but I think what you add to that quote that she says, understanding we're imperfect, right? And so there is a lot of brokenness in our humanity that does need to be healed. There's a lot of ignorance that needs to be unlearned, right? That needs to be unlearned so that we can say, and I love, again, how you anchored it in even when you're with your girls, and I feel the same way about my kids. It's it's not just about them. I have to understand the impacts on everyone else, right? And that's hard sometimes, right? To get out of our silos and survival silos, as I call them, and say, hey, I want my kids to thrive, I want this, but it's also justice is everyone thriving, right? You had some fun times on the board.
So fun.
You had some, and how did you navigate, because you had to deal with that imperfect humanity on a board of 7, right? Which I think a lot of times you handled that with lots of grace, and then other times we had friendship calls afterwards, and I'm like, you can do it, stick with it. What was the biggest lesson you learned there? Is how do you navigate that with everything you just said? How did you navigate that with 7 people?
Yeah. Oh, there are just so many different ways. I mean, I've talked to you about this before. I mean, first of all, you do have to go in and say, people want to be successful. They want to feel like they're making an impact. Everyone thinks the impact they're trying to make is good, and I think if you see it from that point of view, then you approach people differently. And so that was I think it was just that respect of, even when I disagree with people, it was one person, it was a little harder than the others.
No names.
No names. But I think generally it was just saying, okay, they want to feel successful. So how can I help them achieve that so that this meant something and they had an impact, and then how can we align those together? Sometimes it could come together, a lot of times it couldn't, but I think that built that goodwill. And I just think, if we treat people with respect, if we listen to them, if we care about them, even when we don't agree, there's a place to always come together. And you always want to leave that door open, because if you're truly going to make systemic change, it cannot be on its 7-person board, it can't be a 4-3. It's got to be somehow we all got there together, regardless of how we voted. And I just took that super seriously. Yeah,
you did. You led well in those instances, right? And as much as folks, there were a lot of 4-3s, but I think folks also forget there were a lot of 7-0s. Where that did happen, and to your point, everybody wanted to see the best things for kids. And we also get villainized in this
Yeah.
work when we're doing what, to your point, what is the right thing. I remember, like, when we look at things like choice, parent choice,
Yeah.
when we look at making sure that parents have access to high quality options, when we look at, we dare say the word innovation, right? When we look at these things, we've seen some of these right things get attempted, but then also simultaneously attacked.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel when you know, like, look, we're trying to get to a more just place,
Right.
and these pathways to justice seem to be obstructed?
Yeah.
Like, how do you process that as a justice warrior?
Wow, lots of different ways. One way, though, is, people make hard decisions. They do things, they take in the best information they can, they make a decision, and sometimes those decisions are just wrong. I have made wrong decisions that I, even then, probably had information I could have done things differently. I think when people entrench themselves and they identify with that decision, so therefore if they admit this was wrong or I could have done this differently, then they're wrong,
Powerful.
then they're bad.
Right.
And I think, part of that movement, both of self and of people and of systems, is that awareness, and the mistakes feel terrible because they're children. They impact children.
Right.
And so it's the hardest thing, I think, to be able to understand that, have that awareness, and move forward anyway.
Yeah.
So
When you think about, and I love the vulnerability too, when you think about your commitment to justice, what's one decision that you'd say, oof, I wish I had that one back?
I don't know if I had it back.
Or we, like you said,
Right.
looked at all the information.
Right.
Right.
Well, I think a lot about McAuliffe, for
Okay.
example, and I was so proud of
Which part of it? The creation of
the
it?
creation of
Okay,
it,
all right.
but I want to talk about the trajectory
Okay,
of it.
all right.
So the creation of it, though, we had Smiley, which my siblings went to Smiley Middle School, and but at that time it was empty. Families that had means were choicing out. They were going to Hill and other places. They weren't staying in their community, in their neighborhood. And so you basically had this iconic school that was empty and not serving kids well, the kids that were there. And so helping to create McAuliffe, and then starting it in Central Park, just across Quebec, and thinking we can bring this school into North Park Hill, that this can be a great school for all students. And I think especially in those early years, they did some really amazing things. It completely then segregated a community. It pushed out families, and that was never the intent. The intent
the
was
families you're trying to retain.
right.
Yeah.
We're trying to actually integrate it
Right.
and sort of bring the kids over from Central Park and sort of in that school,
Yes.
and then it got bigger and bigger, and then the property values went up because suddenly all these families wanted to be there, and higher income families, and it just, so I think that that humility or understanding that in a moment, maybe you can be successful. Maybe there's success for 4 or 5 years, but what happens year 7, year 10?
Yeah.
And how do we look ahead? So I think a lot about that decision and all the consequences I didn't anticipate when I was fighting so hard for that.
That is, that's wisdom, right? That's to say, the long journey of justice, right? How do I ensure that this is not a momentary win when I need this to be generational wins, right? And I think, we could probably look at a lot like that, because to your point, it's I love when you said we attach ourselves to these things, and we sometimes then only can see through this.
Right.
Say, okay, I'm 4 years. Well, bro, the cycle of a kid's education is actually 13 years.
Right.
And so how are we making sure that this is going to be sustained, and the goals of diversity, right? That we've heard other folks sit here talk about the beautiful diversity of Park Hill, right? And how could we lose that, right? And we just, so those are, that's great wisdom.
And if you can see, here's how we lost that. Here's the arc of what that happened. And it happened actually really quickly.
Right.
And I do think, watching families that would not give Smiley the time of day, 5 and 6 years later, saying, my kid should be here and these other kids should not be here. It was just holy, you don't even know what was going on 6 years. How can you not even know what you're saying?
And it is heartbreaking, because then it's totally counter the justice that you're looking for.
That's right.
And it's it was a good decision, but there's so much more complexity to it.
People, if they're not part of that decision, they don't know. And then and we I know we've talked about this so many times, like especially in education, as if you're involved as a parent, it is a baton you're holding, but
Yes.
also as an elected official or an advocacy role, like we're holding a baton and we're going to pass it to someone else. We can't just pass the work.
Right.
You know, we actually have to
The
pass the
history
and the
yes.
values and the belief and the vision and the
Yes.
equity and all of that. I sometimes think we just hand off the work and not everything else.
You know, if I was at DSST, I'd snap.
Would you?
That was
Yeah.
that was a good snap.
I see all these people
Yeah,
doing
I
this
mean,
now.
when you think about where we've seen things go in the last 16 years, I'm going to come to innovation, right? This was another. You know, we've gotten to mud. We fought for a lot of things that people we don't attach our names to all of it, right? But you think about the innovation push, right? And we think about some of the first innovation schools that sought this ability, and I still call it to be liberated from the bureaucracy that was in the way. Leaders, by design, it's leaders and teachers and families coming together to say, we are here on this campus. We understand these students better than anyone.
Yeah.
But the bureaucracy is telling us we can only serve them this way.
Right.
But we want to be able to move beyond the bureaucracy and serve them the best way.
Right.
Why would that be problematic?
I don't know. Well, and this was a lesson, I think, in the fight for justice, too. It's actually the hardest things in your fight for justice are when you have to go against your friends, you know, and the people that you've worked with, you've been in the trenches with, like, and suddenly you're like, why aren't we seeing the world in the same way?
Right.
And it feels so much better just to be like, there must be something wrong in my head,
Right.
and to sort of just go along and agree, that's the danger zone. And I think innovation is an incredible example of that. People were okay with it to a certain point, right? When they saw that autonomy benefited their vision, so whether that was like, you know, from teachers union contracts, you know, like to that line, they weren't thinking about how they themselves were creating this system of oppression and a system where educators couldn't actually be free to really serve students and communities and families because they couldn't imagine they were the barrier and they were the problem. And that, you know, on the innovation side, I really learned that, like, and I lost, like, my friends, which by friends I mean the people I've been fighting so hard with to improve education.
That was hard. It was brutal. I still have, you know, my therapist.
Yeah.
Still gets a lot of talk about innovation.
I know. Well, you went through a couple, like, brutal things. But people
all because of Mary. She,
Thanks.
you know. But I think that's the thing, is like you have to, I think the stamina, this was justice stamina, like, we know, I mean, we would hope as parents, now as a grandparent, right? I would hope that we would see some of this realized in the time for our kids and grandkids, right? And so I think that's why we both have stuck with it, because we understood. I love, again, all these great things that are coming from great people, I'm going to use them. I'm stealing we have to pass down more than just the work, right? That's huge, right? We have to pass down, like what you said, the hope, the history, and all of those kind of things to say, hey, it's not just the work, it is actually the mindset. The work will look different as we've learned. Like you're doing some amazing things, and you know, I heard you got a new documentary coming out. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, you're going to come to the premiere?
Yeah,
okay,
you know,
January 22nd.
I heard about it. Yesterday, and I think climate action, all these different things that you've been working on, still are justice-driven things. And again, say why aren't we there? Now you also, most folks don't know, you are trained lawyer, right? You're brilliant mind. What do you believe, Mary? Do you believe we've heard justice delayed is justice denied? Are we going to continue on this cycle of justice being delayed and therefore denied to the same communities? Or do you believe that through the work that you're doing and the work that we can all do together, that we can realize justice? Is there still hope in the heart of Mary Sewell?
Oh, for sure. There's so much hope. But I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if it's delayed or denied, and these are cycles and they're never ending. I don't know, but I know I have my role to play in this moment, and that's, I have to at least do that, you know? Like, I can't just think it's going to be solved without me, you know? And so that, I think, is the hope, is that we are going to make progress, and sometimes it is so discouraging. I mean, you've seen this, I've seen in your eyes sometimes just like the pain of that, you know, and it is really, it's hard to bounce back, but you do.
Yeah.
You get up again. I look at the work you've done over time. You carry, sister, you're still a really young man, but you carry this, but you carry that knowledge because you care about the people that came before and the voices that they've said. And so, I don't know, like, you give me hope and the role you've played. And, like, you know, so I'm hopeful because of you, you know, and hopeful of other people that.
A story that most folks don't know is that there was, when we were at 900 grad, I was running the student board of education, so we got to go like the night before you guys' board meetings. And I put remember the grade report of a student, Darius Churchill, I say his name because I honor him because he was a young man who was killed in our community at 34th and York, right? At the time, he was a young man who had been systemically, socially promoted, came to us with no grade level skills at Manual after he left another high school in our district. Won't mention that, but he ended up killed, right? Because the options that were before him were limited. And I remember coming to you when we first got him and said, Mary, how is this possible? I remember leaving his grade report there. And I say that because I want folks to know, like, those are the kind of things that were constantly in your mind and heart. I know when you were making decisions for kids, I knew that you were thinking about those young people who we were failing. And I'm giving you your flowers because I know we don't often get to hear, like you said, the applause or the thank you. But that's what I'm saying to you. Thank you for being a justice warrior. Thank you for always, you know, when we've had our agreements, when we've had our disagreements, we've always pushed each other. There's always been respect. There's always been, like, knowing that, hey, we're both, sometimes we vented to each other because we were just frustrated that we weren't there yet. Right? And so I believe we can get there because I see the work you're doing. I see the things that you continue to push for. And I think justice can be realized in our time. We have to do things differently. So I think we have to continue to push. You know, can't do it the same way. It's got to be innovative. It's got to look at these young people now and say, hey guys, where have we failed them? How can we stop failing them? And to your point, it's got to be this. It's got to be everybody at the table versus this, because this doesn't work, and we've seen it. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for giving us some time. Thank you for being a justice warrior. Thank you for continuing to fight, you know, and continue to hope. 10 years from now, where are we going to be?
Wow. Well, I hope at the maybe the new City Park clubhouse looking over, like, the city, you and I can, like, have tea or something.
Or something stronger.
Or something you can, okay, if you're up for that, I'm always up for that. No, but I think in 10 years that, I don't know, we're still here, but other people are also in these seats, and they're feeling that sense of responsibility and duty that you and I wake up every single day and feel, and that they're hopeful, you know, and they're doing, and we're learning from them, you know. People like Caleb, you know, so,
I can join you 10 years from now.
Okay, it's
at
not
City
that
Park.
far,
It's not before we know it, we're like, oh my goodness.
I'm gonna be 65.
Yeah, you know.
You'll just be 42.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Vernon.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Justice Cast. If you are moved and inspired by what you heard this week, we need you to do justice by doing 3 things. Number 1, like and share this episode with your friends and family and network. Number 2, sign and share the Do Justice Pledge. And 3, join us for an upcoming Do Justice action. You can find those listed on our website at www.faithbridgeco.org. That's www.faithbridgeco.org. Remember, the world we believe for is possible. Do justice.
Thank you to Mary Sewell for being our guest this week. Thank you to our funders and sponsors. Join us next week when Vernon sits down with former Denver Public Schools board member Ann Rowe.